Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so very good morning and welcome to the 15th lecture, which is a part of the third week lecture. You remember that before this lecture, we talked about how to use different methodologies for collecting data, and there we discussed about two major systems, that is comparative systems and also absolute systems, that is relative and absolute methods of measuring performance. And there we discussed about ranking, rating and other kind of methodologies. Now, after discussing these methodologies, now finally, we are going to collect data, use these methodologies. So, in this lecture we will examine that how we are going to collect data related to performance using different approaches that we have discussed in the past. So, when you are going to collect information related to measuring the performance of an individual, how do we go about it? So, there are different ways through which we can collect data. Okay. You can go for observations, you can go for interviews, you can go for rating scales and these kind of things. But ultimately what happens that you need to develop a form for data collection, right. So, you need to develop a instrument through which you are going to collect data irrespective of the method that you are going to use for data collection, right. So, when you are going to measure performance using any of these technologies methodologies, basically you need to prepare a form, a price that is known as appraisal form or evaluation form, and this evaluation form is used for data collection. Now, if you look at this, what are the various components of an appraisal form? To start with, what we go, that we provide the basic employee information like his name, date, the evaluation period of the employees, right. And then we also identify, as we have already discussed in the past, what are his key accountabilities, objectives and standards against which the performance is evaluated. And based on that, we are going to identify what are the competencies which are supposed to be reflected by the individual and what are the indicators of those competencies. All this we have discussed in the past. Then as a part of the appraisal, we also list down what are the major achievements that have been made by the individual during a given period and what are his contributions, individual contributions. Not only that, but we also discuss about the developmental achievements, that in the previous year if he has made any plan for the development, the extent to which these development plans have been achieved by the individual, right. And then similarly, for this financial year, based on the data or the performance, what kind of development needs, plans and goals you are going to set for the next year. Okay. And then the input is also taken from the immediate supervisor, or at the next level it could be from his next supervisor also, it means the supervisor's supervisor. Okay. Then employee is going to write about him, that okay, whether it is correct or not, what extent he has been able to achieve them, and then he is going to put in signature. So, now if you look at the form, it could be something like this. So, first of all you have employee details in any form, right. It could start with name of the employees, period of evaluation, okay. And the period of evaluation could be 6 months or 1 year, usually it is 1 year. So, for example, if you are taking a financial year, so it could be from 1/4/2016 to 31st March 2017. Many companies use this financial year, because based on that they are going to provide reward or bonus or whatever is there. Then you also write the name of the department in which he works, what is his position, right, who is the reporting officer. Okay. So, this is the first kind of data that you get, right. Then at the next stage what you are going to get is what are his key accountabilities, and here you are going to write basically the KPAs or KRAs, right. So, you are going to write the KPAs and KRAs. Suppose you are taking the case of faculty, then you are going to write teaching, research, training and consulting. So, these are the key accountability areas that you are writing. Then for each of them you are also writing what are the objectives, okay, in each of these areas. Then you are also writing standards against which the performance will be evaluated. So, you are not only writing KPAs and KRAs, but for each of these 3 objectives 1, 2, 3, you are also writing what are the objectives that is to be achieved. For example, you say that okay, teaching 2 courses, publishing 2 papers, bringing 20 lakhs rupees, something like that. So, based on this information you are going to evaluate, because they are going to act as a standard for you. So, what you are going to look at it that okay, what are the accountabilities, what are the objectives, what are the standards, and then next stage basically what you are going to do is basically you are going to evaluate. So, when you are going to evaluate the performance of the candidate, so you are going to say what are his accountability, objectives and standards, and what are his achievements in these areas, say teaching, how many courses he has taught, how many papers he has published, how much revenue he has generated, okay. And then what was the plan last year, whether he is able to achieve those plans or not for the last year. Then what is the development needs and plans and the goals which he is likely to set for the next year. Then this input you also get stakeholders input from the supervisor, and then ultimately the employees gives his comments and put his signature. So, this is roughly a appraisal form. So, moving further, suppose you are going to use a particular methodology, say for example, you are going to use a rating scale, right. So, you are going to measure this on 2 accounts, that is behavior and results. Okay. Results are objective measures. So, that is not a problem, you can see whether he is meeting the numbers or not in terms of targets. Okay. In terms of behavioral outcomes, what are the competencies that you are going to look at it? So, say for example, leadership, decision making, communication, okay, problem solving. So, for a manager you are going to use these behavioral skills. These are the competencies which is going to show. So, for these competencies then you are going to identify what are the different kind of behaviors 1, 2, 3 which indicate that these competencies are present or not. Then you are going to use a rating scale, that is say a 5-point scale 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right. So, on a 5-point scale you are going to measure these behaviors using a rating scale, or you can use other methods like critical incident. So, whether that particular behavior is shown or not, okay, and whether it is contributing to the performance or not. So, you are using these scales to measure the competencies and the indicators, so far as behavior is concerned, and also the results that is obtained by the individual. The idea here is that you are going to see with what are the achievements and the results that he has achieved using these 2 things. Okay. Now, moving further, we are talking about the next thing that is related to what you call say characteristics of a appraisal form. So, when you are going to develop an appraisal form, what are the things that you are going to look at? You are going to see that this appraisal form is very simple, written in a language that is understood by the person who is going to evaluate the performance, okay, and also make sure that the items that are the dimensions that you are going to use for evaluation is relevant, important and critical to the job, because if the items that you are using for measuring these competencies are not relevant to the job, it does not have any meaning. It means that your appraisal system is at fault. So, make sure that you are going to use all those relevant items and dimensions for measuring the performance, and then you also provide a description. For example, when you are going to use a 5-point scale, okay, and you are simply writing not at all to a great extent on a 5-point scale, it is not very clear what does it mean. So, for each item, if you are giving a description, what does it mean to say not at all or to a great extent, probably that would help the rater to better evaluate the performance of the individual, and make sure that you are able to adopt it. What I mean to say here by adaptability is that yes, you are going to make use of it for the purpose for which you have developed it. Otherwise, if you are not able to adopt it, probably you will not be able to use it. Then make sure that it is comprehensive. What I mean to say here by comprehensiveness is that it include all aspects of performance, okay, and that is why you remember the example that I just gave is that you are going to include behavioral as well as result both. So, you are going to see that what are the behaviors which are relevant, which contribute to the success and performance, and you also see that what are the various results that he is obtained in terms of achieving the goals and the targets, okay, because both of them are going to contribute to your performance, okay, because behavior contributes to your results and result is that is what is measured against certain set standards. So, make sure that it is very comprehensive in the sense that it touches all the aspects, all the relevant dimensions and the competencies which has contributed to the performance, and that is why we go about talking KPAs or KRAs are the key accountability areas which contribute to your performance. Okay. Then, when you are going to write these competencies, you need to define them very clearly, so that the rater is able to understand whether the competency that you are talking about is correct, it is valid and reliable or not. Say for example, you are talking about decision making, right. So, this is a one competency which you want to measure among the pricey. Now, in order to measure this competency, you need to define what does it mean. So, if you are not able to define what the competency mean, then probably you will not be able to measure it. So, you need to define is that okay, where the person is able to take appropriate decision related to his or not. Now, this is something that is vague. Taking an appropriate decision might be questioned. For example, when you say an appropriate, what do you mean by an appropriate? Whether it is right decision or not, how do you know about it? So, whether decision brings effective results or not, so that is correct. Whether the decision that is taken by the individual bring good results or not, or contribute to success or not. So, you need to define the concept, okay, and the level at which it is required by the individual, that is to identify. Okay. So, any competency that you are talking about in terms of measurement, it must be defined clearly. Okay. And when it comes to measurement, say you are using as a 5-point scale, okay, and you say decision making scale is very good, not good at all. This is not enough. So, when I am talking about comprehensiveness, it has to be descriptive. So, then you put labels to this, and this label should be related with what you call decision making. Why I am saying decision making? Because you are measuring decision making, you are using a rating scale. So, when it comes to measurement of this particular competence, you are defining it, and then for identifying the decision making capacity of the individual, you are going to see whether it is good, very good or very bad. That is not enough. What does it mean to say when you say very good? Okay. So, it means that all the decisions that is taken by the individual has resulted in effective performance, right. So, it means that you are very clear what does it mean to say by very good. Similarly, when you are saying good, what does it means to say, or whether you are saying average, what does it mean to say, not good, okay, below average, then what does it mean, right. So, you need to see that when you are going to develop an appraisal form, make it simple, make it relevant, make it comprehensive, define all the competencies related to the behavior, specify the standards in measurable terms, right. And then whether you are using a scale or not, or whatever scale you are using, make sure that each and every competencies are defined and the level at which it is there in the individual is measured in a very objective way. So, then after it is clearly defined, then we move to the next stage, that you need to communicate to the individual, okay, that this is what is there, and this has to a time frame, as I told you earlier, that yes, any evaluation has to be done within a given time frame. So, you need to define the time frame in which the individual is going to be evaluated. Now, how you look at the overall rating? Does it the summation of all the points that he achieved in all the ratings, depending upon the number of dimensions that you have. Suppose you have 10 dimensions related to behavior on a 5-point scale. So, the maximum rating that he can get is what? 100, if he gets 5 point on all these scales, right. Okay. So, this is the way to determine the rating. It means that you are making a judgment considering all the dimensions of the performance, and then you are preparing a summary that overall his performance is very good, very bad, or whatever it is there. So, suppose you have 20 dimensions 5-point scale, right. So, the maximum marks that he get is 100. So, this 100 is divided by, say, how many dimensions you have? 20. So, how much you get? 5, right, 20, because 100 divided by 20 becomes 5. It means that overall rating that you are going to have is going to be 1 in between 1 and 5. So, 5 means that the outstanding, very good, excellent performance, and 1 means that the performance is not satisfactory at all, right. But when you are going to do this, make sure that you are not going to make any error. Okay. It is very, very important that you do not do it mechanically, because if you are doing it mechanically, the way I have described that, okay, on a 20 item scale, 5-point scale, and you are measuring performance, and you say that your overall rating is 3.5 out of 5. So, this suggests that you are using a very mechanical approach in evaluating the performance, right. So, what you do in mechanical approach, that you consider all the scores and then add them up to get the score, and then divided by the number of items. So, you get the overall score. The other one is what we know as judgmental approach. In judgmental approach, what happens? You look at each and every aspect of performance, and then you provide a summary, okay, for each aspect. Okay. And in mechanical, what happens? You add up everything and then you provide it. Okay. So, it is always good to go for a judgmental approach than mechanical, okay, because in a mechanical approach there is a possibilities of errors. Okay. Now, another section which include in appraisal forms apart from the rating scales, that is the open ended sections. These open ended sections are there where supervisors give their comments, or the boss of the immediate supervisor give their comments. For example, if I am going to be evaluated by my head, then my head's boss, okay, who may be manager, senior manager, is going to provide his comment, right. So, these open ended comments are also considered when you are going to rate the overall performance, right. Now, the performance has already been evaluated by the immediate supervisor. So, when it comes to writing open ended comments by the immediate supervisor, then what are the challenges? How we are going to do it? Okay. So, how we are going to make use of it, okay, to identify the performance level. So, look at some of the challenges that you have. How we are going to analyze the data that is provided in the text format. Okay. How much it is written, what is the variation in the content, what is the quality of the content. Okay. So, these are some of the issues that you are giving. For example, you have rated the performance as 3.5 using a mechanical approach. Beyond that mechanical approach, there is another section in the performance appraisal form, where you are going to provide your comment, and then write that yes, the performance of the staff appears to be satisfactory and he needs to improve on these accounts. Okay. And then you mention certain things based upon the feedback that you have got from the supervisor and the performance data that you have at your hand. So, you look at the form, look at the supervisor's comment, and then you are going to write certain things. Now, the question that arises is that what is the quality of the writing that you have given? Okay. How much description you have provided, whether you have given just 3-4 lines or you have provided a full description, right? And what is the content that is provided to you. So, the best way is that use the content, find out the theme that is coming out of it, okay, and see whether the kind of information that you are looking forward to is coming forward or not. Okay. So, it is very very important is that is coming out of this discussion is that when raters are going to evaluate the performance of their subordinates, they must be trained and they must develop certain skills, so that they are able to do it accurately and these kind of things. Right. Now, another issue that comes out when it comes to evaluation of the candidates and getting data related to performance from the employees is that what is the period of evaluation, okay, and how many meetings you are going to have. Okay. See, most of the organizations, it is a customary to follow annual review process. So, at the end of the year or at the end of the financial year, you are going to evaluate the performance of the employees, right. This happens in the case of regular confirmed employees, but in some cases where people are on probation, this could be done on a quarterly basis, right, or it could be done semi-annually to continuously observe and monitor their performance. Okay. Now, many companies have this kind of practice where an employee joins first. So, they are going to put on probation for a 3 period and where their performance is measured, but once he gets confirmed, it is going to be annual performance review. Now, many companies have made it a practice to move away from annual reviews, okay, and they have moved from annual reviews and they are going for continuous review and evaluation of the performance. Many IT companies, many manufacturing companies, many innovative companies now today you will find that they have done away with the annual performance reviews, right, or they have not even going for semi-annual reviews, either they are going for quarterly reviews. So, every 3 months they are evaluating the performance, or every month they are tracking our performance. Okay. So, this is a new trend that has come out, right, because if you are going for annual review, there is a possibility that you are not able to provide or do justice with the performance of the individual, because you might miss out certain things. Okay. You will not supervisor is not able to observe each and everything that is done by the individual. So, many of the things may be left out of the performance evaluation. So, it is always good to not to go for annual reviews, but go for quarterly reviews or continuous review and evaluation of the performance. Okay. So, if you are going for annual review, it means that at the end of the session you are going to do it, okay. And but it is not related to reward, because you are not using financial year, but if you are using financial year or fiscal year, like from say starting with April 1 to 31st March, okay, then you can link it with the reward, because the new financial year you are going to have new goals. Then you can also identify the goals for the individual, okay, and then you can also reward him depending upon his performance in the last fiscal year. So, both of them are used, either you are using a fiscal year or the calendar year, whatever it is there, or it could be from the date of the joining of the individual. So, suppose I have joined on 1st July. So, by evaluation will take place from 1st July to 31st June. Okay. So, this is what we know as anniversary dates. Okay. So, if it is always good to go for anniversary dates, because there you have an opportunity to evaluate employees at different periods of time, because not everybody is going to join on the same date. Okay. Now, when it comes to evaluations and meetings of performance to get or collect data related to the performance of the individual, okay, you need to develop a system, okay, and you can follow either self appraisal, where the individual is going to evaluate his performance. We will discuss about self appraisal in detail, or another option is that you go for annual performance review, okay, and then based on that you are going to see that what is his performance. You try to link it with the salary. So, you review his salary, look at try to see that it is linked with performance, it is fair, it is justifiable, and also make the development plan for the next year and set the goals and objectives. Okay. So, when the meeting takes place to collect data, you are going to use of any particular system using a rating scale or whatever methodology you have adopted to collect data to measure the performance. So, you have to see whether it is done by the individual itself or it could be done by the supervisor, okay, and what methodology you are going to adopt, whether you are going for annual performance review or you are going for semi-annual or continuous performance review. And then you also see that whether it is linked with reward or not, okay. And what would be the development for the next financial year or next fiscal year or anniversary, and then you are going to set the goals and objectives accordingly. Now, the next question is that who is going to provide performance information. Okay. Now, who is the best just to get to provide data related to the performance, right. So, you also need to identify various sources of collecting data related to the performance, and in most cases it is accepted principle that employees should be involved in the process of data collection, because it is the employees who knows about the data. So, when it is evaluated by the supervisor, he is going to ask employees or observe him and collect data based on his record, right. So, another source of information could be the supervisor, it could be peers, it could be subordinate staffs, it could be other stakeholders, right. So, you have to, but ultimately involve employees in collecting data. At the same time, you also need to identify who could be the potential sources who could be participating in the evaluation process, right. But if you are going to involve employees in the process, you get a better acceptance of the results, because he knows that okay, this is what I was expected to achieve and this is what I am going to do it. Okay. And this also ensures that employees consider that yes, the system is very fair and acceptable to them. Okay. So, when we are discussing about who is going to provide information about the data related to the employee performance, it could be starting with the employees, okay, the first source, then you move on to the supervisors, because in the direct contact and observation, then it could be the peers with whom you work, right. Then it could be subordinates, because they are also interacting and observing the performance, right. And then it could be the customers, external customers, right, suppliers, vendors, right. They could also be allowed to participate. It depends upon what kind of approach you are going to adopt for data collection, right. So, whether you are going for immediate supervisor giving the performance ratings, or whether you are including the individual itself also going for self evaluation, or you are going for a multi source feedback to rate or evaluate the performance of the individual. So, you can go for any kind of thing depending upon the requirement. Now, if you look at supervisors providing the data related to the performance, right, since he is involved in identifying goals, aligning it with the strategic goals of the organization. Okay. So, it is always good to involve supervisors, because he is going to see that based upon your performance you get the reward, right, and he will be able to differentiate okay, on various dimensions the competencies of performance, how well you have done, right. So, he would be considered as the most important source in collecting data from the employee. Then the disadvantage is that if he is not able to observe certain things, then he will not be able to provide data, and if he does not like the candidate or the subordinate, then his evaluation may be biased. Now, coming to the peers, since interact, okay, they can see whether he is able to have good interpersonal relationship, he is able to work in a team or not. So, on these accounts peers can provide information, okay. But it also has certain disadvantages, because if you are a friend then you give good rating, otherwise not. But and it is very difficult to discriminate, okay, and also the context, because each peer is working in different area and he may not be the best just to do it. So, you are going to use peers only for certain dimensions. Then when you are going to include subordinates in the process, subordinates, since they work with you, they know what you are doing, whether you are able to guide them, whether you are able to lead them, whether you are going to help them in performing or not, right. So, they would be able to assess some of your competencies, not all competencies, which is related to their performance. Okay. But sometimes what happens, supervisors also provide inflated data, because they do not want to displease the supervisors, because they know that supervisor is going to provide them reward. Okay. So, if they are giving bad rating, they might fear retaliation also, because you need to maintain confidentiality. So, if you want data from subordinates, you need to maintain confidentiality, that is very important. Then when it comes to individual providing the data, definitely it would be more acceptable, he will be able to defend his performance, right. But the advantage is that sometimes he could be lenient, his performance rating could be exaggerated and he could be biased. Similarly, if we are going to include customers in the process, again these kind of things might happen. Okay. So, if you are not able to meet the customer expectations, he will not give you a good rating, right, but it also involves more time and money. So, you have to be careful to decide who is going to be involved in the process of evaluation. Now, when you are going to use not just one source and many sources, there is a problem. The problem is that there could be disagreement across various resources from which you have collected data. For example, the feedback that is provided by the employees is different from the supervisors, it varies from the subordinates, customers have given different kind of feedback. So, how are going to assign weights to scores by source depending upon the importance. So, you have to identify which source is more important, which source is less important, how much weightage you are giving to each source of information, right, and then accordingly you are going to evaluate the performance of the individual. Then these are some of the problems which might be there among the supervisors, right. For example, he could be biased, his standards are not clear, he is influenced by the positive factors, that is halo effect, or a negative factor, that is Horn effect. Sometimes try to evaluate average. They are sometimes these raters, when they evaluate their subordinates, neither give very good performance rating nor very bad performance. Okay. So, this is what we know as central tendency. It means that they try to rate everybody as average. So, neither they want to please nor displease everybody, right. Sometimes they become very lenient. So, they give very good rating. Sometimes they are very strict. So, they give very bad rating. Sometimes what happens that if they find that yes, the subordinate is meeting his characteristics, his expectations is similar to us, then you provide good rating to them. If he is not meeting your temperament, your characteristics, your personality, then you give a bad rating. Sometimes what happens, you look only at the recent performance, and based on these recent performance, you evaluate him fairly or badly. Okay. So, this is what we know as recency effect. Then spillover effect, you know that the person has performed very well in the last session, last performance cycle. So, it is still in your mind, and that is carryover effect is there, and in this session also you try to evaluate his performance accordingly. So, these are some of the problems which might crop in, right. So, now if you look at this is how the rater should be motivated. Okay. So, make sure that raters understand what the positive and negative consequences of evaluations. Okay. So, they must experience these kind of things, that what is the probability of these consequences, okay, and what are the expected consequences. Okay. And based on that, you see that whether they are really motivated enough to provide good rating or not, okay, or if it is not, then it is the rating is going to be distorted. So, whatever problems we discussed related to the supervisors, either it is going to inflate their rating or going to deflate their rating. Okay. So, the rating behavior depends upon experiences of and expectations and probabilities of these kind of things, right. So, if you are going for inflated rating, what happens? The employees get better rewards, he is motivated enough, right. But you also avoid confrontation because you want to please everybody. Okay. But sometimes you are going to promote or reward those who are not deserving candidates, right. And if you are going to have deflated ratings, then probably you have an idea that yes, you want to give a shock to the employees, teach them a lesson because they are not performing well, and you also want to communicate a message to the employees that you are very strict so far as performance is concerned. And then, but in that case you need to prepare a record of poor performance, show that you can show that yes, your performance is very poor. So, the raters need to be trained how to evaluate, they must be motivated enough, they must have all the record, observe and evaluate performance properly, and they should know that how they are going to interact while collecting data related to the performance. Okay. So, that you can reduce these distortions which may come up in the rating, because if you are collecting data and data is inflated or deflated, then it has no use, right. So, it is always good to ensure that your ratings are justified, you are going to do an accurate job of rating without any error. So, there is no intentional or unintentional error that is going to follow with you. Thank you very much.